They attacked him before he even knew who he was. In dreams, in strange sicknesses, through battles no one around him could explain. Because in the kingdom of darkness, his name had already been mentioned. Before he discovered his calling, hell had already marked him. And every demonic altar made one vow: this boy must never rise. From childhood, his life was full of strange battles. Whenever he tried to move forward, something pulled him back. Doors closed. Friendships turned poisonous. Women came into his life only to scatter his focus. Even people who looked like destiny helpers were sent with hidden assignments. But every trap failed, because what they were fighting was not just a man. He was carrying fire. He was carrying a calling. He was chosen. Years passed, and the young man finally discovered who he was. He answered the call of God. He became a pastor, and suddenly, everything changed. When he prayed, the sick were healed. When he spoke, demons screamed. When he laid hands on the oppressed, chains broke instantly. People traveled from different places just to hear him preach. His ministry grew. His name spread, and the kingdom of darkness became afraid. Because the prophecy was becoming reality, then the altars gathered again. And this time, they chose a different weapon. Not sickness, not poverty, not bad friends. One of the altars sent an agent, disguised as a faithful woman. She entered his church quietly. Humble, dedicated, always serving, always smiling. She worked harder than everyone, led departments, supported the ministry, earned everyone's trust, including the pastors. He saw her as heaven's answer, a virtuous woman, a helper, a wife, and soon, he married her. Without knowing, he had brought the enemy into his own house. After the wedding, everything began to shift. His prayer fire weakened, his strength faded, his spirit became heavy. The miracles reduced. The voice he once heard clearly grew silent. Then one night, the altars gathered. Power from different kingdoms joined together, and the strike was released against him. In the middle of the attack, the pastor collapsed. He slumped to the ground. The church screamed. People ran toward him. But in the corner, his wife stood still, watching, silent, because the assignment was complete. But one question remained. Did the pastor truly fall? Or was God preparing him for a greater battle? Because sometimes, before a chosen man rises into greater power, darkness launches its final attack. The church froze in fear. Pastor, pastor. Members rushed toward the altar as the young pastor lay motionless on the ground. Women cried. Ushers shouted. Some people began praying loudly. But in the middle of the chaos, his wife stood still. No tears, no panic, just silence. And for the first time, one of the elderly women in the church noticed something strange. The pastor's wife was smiling. Very small, but dangerous. That night, the pastor was rushed to the hospital. Doctors ran several tests, but nothing made sense. There is nothing medically wrong with him, one doctor said quietly. Yet the pastor could not speak, could not stand, could not even open his eyes completely. It was as if something invisible was draining life out of him slowly. Days turned into weeks. The once powerful preacher became weak like a child. The same man who cast out demons could no longer pray for himself. And suddenly, people started leaving the church. Rumors spread everywhere. Maybe God has abandoned him. Maybe his miracles were fake. Maybe he sinned secretly. The church became empty. Offerings stopped coming. The pastor's closest assistants disappeared one by one. Only a few faithful members remained, including the old woman who noticed the smile. One midnight, the old woman had a dream. She saw the pastor chained inside a dark spiritual river, and standing beside him was his wife, wearing white in the physical world, but black inside the spirit. Then a voice thundered. The battle is not from outside anymore. The enemy is inside the house. The old woman woke up shaking. The next morning, she gathered the remaining prayer warriors secretly, and together, they began fasting and praying for the pastor. Meanwhile, the wife became more aggressive. Every night, strange shadows appeared in the house. The pastor would scream in his sleep. Sometimes he would wake up bleeding from strange marks on his body. But whenever people asked questions, his wife always acted innocent. Until one night, the pastor finally heard a whisper while lying weak on his bed. "Wake up, before they bury your destiny." His eyes opened suddenly, and for the first time in months, he saw it. Standing beside his wife was a dark figure, watching him, Smiling, the pastor tried to scream, but no voice came out. Tears rolled down his face, because he finally realized the enemy he had been fighting was sleeping beside him. That same night, the wife entered a secret room hidden inside the house. She lit black candles, placed the pastor's photograph on a dark altar, and said softly, "His time is almost over." But unknown to her, someone was watching from outside the window, the old woman, and what she saw that night made her scream the name of Jesus. The old woman fell to her knees outside the window, trembling. Now she understood everything. The pastor was never weak because God left him. He was under attack from inside his own home. That same night, she called the remaining prayer warriors. Only 7 people came. 7 faithful believers. No microphones, no crowd, no cameras, just prayers. At exactly midnight, they entered the church quietly. The pastor was broad and weakly on a wheelchair. His body looked lifeless. His eyes were heavy. But suddenly, as the prayers intensified, the atmosphere changed. A violent wind blew through the church hall. The lights began flickering, and the pastor's wife, who was standing at the back pretending to pray, started shaking uncontrollably. One of the prayer warriors pointed at her and shouted, "Who are you?" Immediately, she screamed and fell to the floor. The entire church froze. Then a strange voice spoke through her. "We were sent to stop him before he becomes too dangerous." People began crying. Others ran in fear. The wife confessed everything. How the altar sent her. How she manipulated his life. How she weakened his spirit slowly after marriage. How darkness planned to destroy his calling forever. The pastor wept silently, not because of pain, but because the person he loved most was the one destroying him. Then suddenly, the pastor stood up, weakly at first, but as he lifted his hands to pray, fire returned to his voice. The church shook with prayers. The chains of darkness broke, and for the first time in months, the pastor smiled again. The evil spirit screamed one last time and left the woman instantly. She collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably. "Please forgive me," she cried. "I was used. I was lost." The church became silent. Everyone waited for the pastor's response. Tears rolled down his face. Then slowly, he walked toward her, and instead of hatred, he stretched out his hand. "Jesus forgave me too," he said softly. "Stand up." At that moment, even the prayer warriors began crying. Months later, the church became full again. But this time, the pastor was different. More humble, more prayerful, more powerful. People traveled from different cities to hear his testimony. And the woman who once came to destroy him became one of the strongest voices preaching against darkness. The same altars that celebrated his fall now trembled whenever he prayed. Because the man they tried to bury came back stronger. And this time, he was no longer fighting alone. I want you to know that is fighting for you. Even when the battle feels endless and the darkness seems close, never forget that God never sleeps and he never slumbers. He sees every tear, every betrayal, every silent prayer, and every battle fought in secret. What the enemy plans for destruction, God can turn into a testimony of victory. No pain lasts forever in the hands of God. No attack is greater than his power. If he kept you through the storm, he will also bring you into your season of healing, restoration, and joy. Hold on to your faith, because God has the final word, and your story is not over yet. Folded hands fire.